Heidi, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel so honored to be here today.
The feeling is mutual, sis, okay? I know we're going to have an amazing conversation, and I'm really excited to get to know you more and your story. But I always start off with every guest who comes on the show to give a brief introduction for people who are meeting you for the first time. Let them know, who is Heidy De La Cruz?
So I like to start off by saying first, I am a daughter of Christ. I am a wife, a mother, podcaster, writer, and a medical coding analyst. So I wear many, many hats, but at the end of the day, I do it all for the glory of God.
I love that. I love that. And we're definitely going to dive deep more into your story. I want to know, and I ask every guest that comes on the show, we always start off with childhood and adolescence. What was life like for baby Heidi growing up? So take us on that journey. Talk about how your personality was. Were there any really big moments that kind of shaped you into the woman that you are today during that time frame?
Looking back, I feel like my childhood was kind of all over the place, to be honest. I don't have a lot of memories of my parents, my biological mom and my dad together. I have a lot of memories of like being with my mom and then being with my dad and my dad's side of the family. So they divorced when I was, I think, 6. So then it was one weekend with my mom, one weekend with my dad until she moved to Florida. And then me and my dad moved in with my grandma, my aunt and uncle. And so we all lived in one house until he met my stepmom. And then we moved into her place. And so they've been together, I think this year will be 20 years. So she's been a big part of my life. She came when I was very young. So up until that point, it was just a lot of back and forth and all over the place. And so I would visit my mom down in Florida for the summers. And so, yeah, so it was a lot of moving around, a lot of things I dealt with when I was younger, just because my mom was bipolar, but we didn't know. No one had diagnosed or anything. So, dealing with her depression and her bipolar disorder and alcoholism. Again, I feel like it was just all over the place. But I do feel like once my dad got with my stepmom, it was more stable because I was able to go to the same school, had the same friends growing up and things like that. But I didn't realize how much my childhood played into my depression and anxiety now until I went to therapy. And then that also ties in with the relationship that I was in that we'll talk about in a little bit.
That was my next question that I just thought of. And that's why I always like starting off with my guests talking about that time period, because I wholeheartedly agree. And there is scientific proven data out there that the things that we experience, whether it's good or bad in childhood, it completely affects us and who we turn into as adults, whether it's traumatic experiences or beautiful experiences and the in between as well. It definitely shapes us into who we become. And I'm curious to know, you mentioned it a little bit, that the separation between your parents, how did that affect you later on in adulthood when you started going to therapy and having that kind of full circle moment of realizing like, the shit that I went through when I was a kid, it's really playing a role into who I am today.
Yes. So my therapist really broke down.
Before you start, I want to know, when did you start going to therapy? When did you start taking your mental health journeys more seriously?
That was after the toxic relationship. When I was like, okay, I need to stop being so angry and get control of my mood swings because I will go up and down. I started with her from the beginning, from childhood up until where I was at that point. So I laid everything down for her. And she really made me realize that as parents, we're supposed to create a safe space for the kids. And my mom couldn't do that. And it's not her fault because she had no idea that she was dealing with a mental health issue. So because I didn't feel safe with my mom, that triggered my anxiety. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology because I'm all about mental health and I love to find out about how our brain works. And then I remember reading that bipolar disorder could be hereditary, right? And so I was like, wow, when I learned that my mom was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, I was like, okay, is my mood swings, does that have to do with bipolar? I remember asking, and she was like, well, from your stories, it just seems like your depression is situational. There are certain situations that you go through that can lower your mood, which is normal. It's to be a normal body response to the situation that you're in. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you're bipolar. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. And with the therapy, I've been able to know what my triggers are and I can see the signs of when I'm down spiraling because since I've had the diagnosis of depression, I've been more conscious now. Like, okay, I feel my mood going down, the things that I usually do to bring me joy, I don't feel like doing them. I'm more conscious now and take things to not even to prevent it, but just to help myself back up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that really comes with working with a professional, right? Like for me, I was diagnosed with PTSD because I'm a domestic violence survivor for those who are listening for the first time. And I hit my rock bottom moment when I escaped that toxic relationship. And when I started doing the rebuilding process of really healing from that trauma, I knew I couldn't do it alone. And that was the first time in my life that I realized, like, yeah, there's something going on within Leanne, that something needs to be handled within me. And I can't pull that out of me by myself. So I think it's really important to utilize those professionals, whether it's therapy or life coach or whatever avenue you want to go down. But I really love that you brought up that point that you were able to learn the tools with someone else. And then once you're no longer working with that person, you still have that toolkit, that tool belt, and you're able to pull them out when lifes, because life is always a life. So I just love that. And I really try to say that in every episode that it's really important to ask for help. That's my whole point behind that.
So I want to go back to how you had mentioned the childhood events affects you because I just read earlier this month the book What Happened to You. I don't know if you've read it.
Yes, I got that book
Oh my
right
gosh.
over there, halfway through it. It's so good.
So good. So it's just such a good resource for people who want to understand how trauma gets stored in our memory and how it affects your development, your behavior, your triggers. And I wrote a blog post about it because I do book reviews on my blog post. And it's just such a good resource to really get insight. But of course, you do need the therapy help. Like, that's not going to replace therapy. It's just a resource that we can use to more understand. But I'm all about the therapy and working with a professional.
I'm definitely going to link that book in the show notes. I have it right on my bookshelf. Shout out to Oprah. Like, she's one of the greatest in my eyes. Okay. And the other doctor, I forgot his name. I'm sorry, but shout out to him too. It's an amazing book. Definitely recommend that y'all check it out. Okay, so now I want to talk about your toxic relationship, and we're going to dive deeper into the healing part of it. But I always kind of like to start off with the bad and then end with the good, just to give my listeners hope and motivation and knowing we've been through some shit, but look at us now. So let's get deep, let's get real. You talk about as much as you're comfortable talking about, but tell us about that toxic relationship. How did it start? What was toxic about it? What were some scenarios that stick out for you when you were in that relationship?
I was very young when we started this relationship. I met him when I was 17. He was 23. So at the time, I was still in high school. He was already in college. And it really started to get toxic that I found out what he was doing 6 months into the relationship. But we were together for 6 years and we even got married. So he had surprised me for my high school graduation. So starting off, we were long distance from the start. He was living in the college town. I was living in my hometown, and it was 45 minutes away. So in the summer, he went to New York to visit family. He surprised me for my high school graduation, and he stayed at our house, and he had logged into his Facebook from my laptop. The battery died. So then when he left and I plugged in my laptop, I saw that his Facebook was still up. So, I did like a little hack status. I was snooping. I don't know why I was snooping.
Because you're a woman. That's what we do. Hello.
Because I didn't have any inclination, because we were long distance, but I snooped. I know I shouldn't have, but whatever. I did. And I found countless messages of him talking to other girls inappropriately, all this other stuff. And I was really heartbroken because it was really my first real relationship, right? At 17, and I was all in. So I saw those messages. I talked to him about it. And he was like, that's nothing. Those girls don't mean nothing. Like, I'm with you, blah, 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 the sweet talking stuff. And I was going to break up with him then, but I didn't. I stayed because he convinced me, blah, blah, blah. It was just an endless cycle of that. Just always finding messages, him always reaching out to girls, sending pictures. All the messages had always been like what he would do with them and flirting. I never saw anything physical, like, hey, last night was great. And I was trying to explain to him, I was like, that's still the same as physically being with somebody. That's still cheating. There's emotional cheating. And he's like, no, that doesn't exist, blah, blah, blah. So this went on and on. I ended up getting pregnant by him. So he's the dad of my daughter. And then we ended up getting married. And again, it was just an endless cycle. He was an international student here from the Dominican Republic. So because he came on a student visa, he had to go back to the Dominican Republic for 2 years. And so during that time, I had told him, I know I still have our daughter, but if you're going to continue doing this, like you still haven't made any changes, I'm going to just do things on my own. And he's like, no, let's be a family. We have a daughter now, blah, blah, blah. So we did the whole long distance from him being over there. And then he finally was able to move here to the United States. And it wasn't even 3 months into him moving here, I found messages again. And the thing was, like, he would always extra lock his phone too. He would lock his phone and then you would go into the phone and then lock apps. Like, it was just always some sneaky stuff. I always feel dumb, but I had to go through that to like get to where I am now. And so not even 3 months into him moving here, I was going through his stuff again. I went through his email and his friend has sent him a video. It's private. What are you going to do? You're going to open that. It was a video of him and another girl. And I don't want to share too much because it was just like so
engaging
traumatic.
In adult activity.
Yeah. And the thing was, it wasn't just them two in that video. So he was actually sleeping when I found that. And I was just in so much rage. I got up and I started hitting him. I know I shouldn't have, but it was just reacting out of emotion. And he was like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Like, what's going on? Because he was sleeping, you know, like, and I just get up and just start hitting him. I was like, you're such a liar. Look. And then he looked at the laptop and then he like got on his knees. He was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was like, no, I'm done. But even then, I was still back and forth deciding if I was done or not because we were married. And I just kept thinking in my head, I don't want to be a statistic of having a broken family. I don't want to be a single mom. I want my child to grow up with both parents.
You don't want to repeat what happened.
Yes, break the cycle. But then, I don't know if it was my therapist or if it was a podcast, but then I had heard you were already in a broken home. And then I was like, oh, that's true. Because I really had to think about that as I want my daughter to have two parents together. But it's like, did I want her to see her mom unhappy? Was this the example that I wanted to set my daughter?
I'm so glad you said that because a lot of women stay in those type of relationships with that same mentality.
Yeah. You will do more damage to the kids emotionally by staying in that relationship than you getting out of it. But I was in another podcast episode and the host had asked me, did I have low self-esteem when I started dating him? And I was like, I actually did because I vividly remember not really valuing myself, thinking that I wasn't really worth a lot. And that stemmed from my dad being very negative towards me, talking down to me. And those negative talks over and over really broke my self-esteem. So I really didn't feel like I was worth much, couldn't do stuff and things like that. So when he came into the picture, those guys paying attention to me, giving me the love that I think I need. So it's like you put up with a lot more. So finally, I decided to cut ties. And I was like, I can't do this for myself and I can't do this to my daughter either. Like I have to have a better example. We cut ties. And I was really bitter. F love, that's not real. Everybody's getting cheated on. Those happy couples on Instagram, that ain't real. Like I was just so bitter. And then it got to the point where I was just doing a lot of things that I shouldn't have been doing. It got to the point where I was like, God, this is not me. This is not who I am. I believe in love. I believe in God. I believe in marriage, right? I believe that a man and a woman can live in a healthy, faithful relationship, mutual respect, mutual commitment. And so that's when actually my now husband came into the picture. I wasn't looking to be in a relationship because I was still hurt and things like that. So the funny thing with my now husband is that my family knew him from where we lived before in Michigan. So he's worked with my uncle, he's worked with my aunt, he went to church with my cousins up in Michigan. I always knew of him, but we never really talked. I knew the type of person he was and that he was a serious guy. So when him and I started talking, I can't bring the baggage from my previous relationship to this one if I want this one to work.
Mm.
And I know this is probably not the best example because they say after a toxic relationship, take some time by yourself to work on yourself and things like that. But this is my truth. And this is what helped me. Honestly, it was if I wanted my new relationship to work with this amazing man that I knew that he was, I had to do the work. And so I remember when we first started talking, it was rocky because I was all over the place. I was emotional, going through my depression and everything. And so I started kind of to push him away and he noticed. So we kind of like stopped talking for a little bit. But then a friend of his was like, don't give up on her because she's a good girl. She's been through some stuff. Just don't give up on her. My husband was like, I'm not the type of guy to go back and forth. It's either you are consistent or you're not. And so since I wasn't being consistent, he was like, okay, this is done. So we ended up talking again, and I just went all open to him, laid it all out. And he was like, well, thank you for telling me about your depression and about everything. So I told him, I was like, I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to get to work and do it. And then he was like, and I'm here to support you. I'm here to be with you, to help you get through this, to help move forward. And that's what really helped me. That's why I was like, I really, really need to do the work to get over this. Because it wasn't me. That wasn't who I am. I'm all about love. I'm all about seeing my dad and my stepmom together for so many years. It can work. So once him and I got together, I did the therapy. And like, I remember after each therapy session, I would tell him, we talked about this, and that. And he was like, how do you feel? I was like, I'm really glad I'm doing this. So it really, really helped a lot because obviously with the cheating and the going through his phone, that insecurity, I just never wanted to feel that way again. And I didn't want those past triggers to sabotage this new healthy relationship. Right. And that's another thing. Like,
we gonna get there. We gonna get there. That's one of my questions is, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing that. I know for me personally, just listening to your story, there's so many things that I can relate to. I felt like I was looking in the mirror while you were repeating that back and I know listeners too, especially women, a lot of my women listeners, they have gone through toxic relationships, and it doesn't always need to be physically abusive. Like you talked about, there was a lot of manipulation, a lot of cheating, a lot of lying. I have experienced all of that in multiple relationships. So I thank you for your vulnerability and your honesty, because that's why I think it's important for us to have these conversations, because me and you are not the only ones going through it. Definitely, there's so many of us out here who have experienced very similar situations, and I think it's important for us to talk about it. So I want to know, after leaving that relationship, being on your therapy and overcoming all of that trauma, what have you learned about yourself while you were in that journey? And I know you also wrote your story, like you're a poet, you're an author. Take us on that journey as well and just talk about the aftermath, the healing, and what you've learned from that experience.
So I was writing poems and poetry during all of that, like how I was feeling, because there was just a lot of emotions that would come randomly, like, oh, I was so stupid. How did I not leave? And things like that. And then scenarios and how he made me feel and everything. So I was writing. That was very therapeutic for me to like write it all out and write those poems, and then going through the healing journey and having to like relive all that. So that was very therapeutic for me. And what I learned about myself was that I learned that I'm very strong. I didn't think that I was. And even during the time that I was with him in that toxic relationship, my mother had passed, my biological mother. So I had to deal with all of that in my early 20s, and I got divorced from him. So like, that's another grief. And so I remember when I was talking to my therapist, she was like, I'm honestly surprised that you only have depression and anxiety, because she's like, what you've been through in X amount of years, people go through in multiple lifetimes, is what she told me. And then I had asked her, I was like, but why is it that I talk about these things as if it's nonchalant? And then she was like, because it was all back to back to back. So your body was just, oh, another thing to get over with. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I learned how resilient I am and how strong I really, really am. Because I just felt like life was just beating me down. But that's what I definitely have learned.
I love that so much. And your body wasn't allowed to process those feelings. And I think that's really important in anyone's healing journey. You really got to sit in your shit. As uncomfortable as it can be, as it is, you really have to just surrender to those really dark moments. Not to say that you should stay there and just live in that moment, because that leads to depression and anxiety and a whole lot of other mental health issues. But it's important to address them. It's important to process them. It's important to give them a face, a name, a scenario, a feeling, whatever comes up for you, and then slowly start to peel back those layers in order to heal from it. But first, you gotta just be in it.
Because it'll blow up. If you just keep suppressing, eventually it's going to blow up in a very, very unhealthy way.
Absolutely, 100%. You see, y'all, I'm not the only one saying it, and I say it all the time. So she's co-signing. So tell us, why did you go public with what you went through in the form of your book and poetry? And also, why do you think it's important for us, especially women, to speak up and talk about the things that we've gone through?
So I went public with my story in the way of poetry because I wanted people to see that you can overcome, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I wanted also to help and be relatable to anyone who may be going through it and just be like, hey, me too. I've been there too. I got over it. Here, if you need anyone to talk to, and just to give that glimpse of hope. Because I didn't have that when I was going through it. I didn't have that light at the end of the tunnel. And yes, I'm very faithful. And yes, I believe in God. But sometimes as humans, it's hard to see it when you're going through it. So I want to be that light to others and just say, me too, sis, I'm here. I got you. I went through it. You can do it too. So that's why I went public. And honestly, I remember when my poetry book was published, I started shaking when I announced it. And I went to my husband and I was like, I'm freaking out because I literally just bared my soul in that book. And was very, very vulnerable. And so it's out there, I can't take it back. But the feedback that I've gotten from me sharing my story, from people reading the poetry book, it has brought tears to my eyes because people have said they can relate because there are so many women going through this stuff. And so a lot of them told me that they could relate. They could feel the pain that I was writing about or the emotion that I was writing about. And some of them even told me that it brought back memories for them. And they used my poetry book as a journal to journal their feelings and things like that. And now that I look back and I'm like, this is why I'm sharing, because I want to help people. And sometimes don't know why we go through what we go through, but looking back, it is for me to help others. Maybe God gives the biggest battles to the strongest soldier. So maybe that was my biggest battle. So then now I can help others. So that's why I feel it's important for us to share. If I could help someone see red flags or anything like that to help them get that courage to get out of that relationship sooner than probably what they would have on their own, then I want to be that light. I want to be that help.
You are the epitome of the type of guest I love featuring on the show, because ditto, same exact thing on why I started my podcast. It originally started with me talking about my experience of overcoming domestic violence and even the toxic relationships I was in beforehand. And just like you, when I started going public, I was so scared. I was like, oh my God, people are going to see me. They're going to judge me. They're going to know the things I was hiding behind closed doors. But then when I got the feedback, sis, the feedback, not even just people that I know in my social circle in person, the feedback on the internet with strangers that have now turned into really lifelong friendships that I haven't even met in person. Wow, I'm really not alone. And that's why it's important to have these conversations, because, like you said, I felt so alone in my own experiences. Nobody knew what I was going through. No one had a freaking clue. I knew how to put on a mask. I knew how to be like, oh, I'm good. We're great. Post on social media. This is my bubble. But then behind closed doors, it's a whole different story. I love that you did that. And in a way that was therapeutic for you as well. You said you love writing, you were able to bare your soul. And for me, I'm good at writing, but I think I could talk a little bit better than I write. So it's like, our podcast is perfect, right? So I love that for you so much. So I want to know, for a listener right now who's tuning in, damn, sis, I think I might be in a toxic relationship, but I don't really know if I want to end it, but I kind of do, but I'm scared to. What's your advice to her?
If you're feeling any insecurity or any inclination that he might be doing something that he shouldn't be doing, trust that. because being with my husband now, there is no insecurity. There is no second guessing. When a man wants to be with you, he will be with you and he will make you feel like there's no one else because there isn't. It's just you. One thing that I always say whenever I talk about this is that there's nothing you can do to prevent him from cheating. Nothing. If he is going to cheat, he is going to cheat. Oh, he can't go out or he can't do this. He can't. No, ma'am. They will find a way. If they're going to cheat, they're going to cheat. I had to learn that the hard way. So I say it countless of times. There was nothing I could have done to prevent that. But now being with my husband, it's like he doesn't make me feel insecure. I don't have to double guess anything. And he knows my past, but he's not that type of guy either. But I've told him, I was like, if I get any inclination or anything that I have to double guess or check your phone or something, I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this again. But luckily, we've been together for 5 years. I haven't had that. So if anybody is double guessing or anything like that, talk to your partner, let them know your concern. If they're dismissive, be like, girl, you crazy. That's a red flag right there. A healthy, loving partner will listen to you, will acknowledge and address your feelings, not dismiss them at all.
I love that so much. Love that so much. And it really just made me think about my own past relationships and the red flags that I ignored as well. I love that you said that if he gonna cheat, he gonna cheat. You can't love them more. You can't, oh, let's be more sexually open and maybe bring a third party in, which is something that I tried in my last relationship. He really wanted to be in a polygamous relationship, and that was just not my vibe. I tried it. Me and that other person, we never did anything sexually together, but it was like he was with her and then he was with me. And I just knew in my spirit, this ain't me. I can't do this. And then spiraled into the whole domestic violence thing. But me trying to be someone that I wasn't going to make him come closer to me and be faithful to me. That's just who he is. And it's not my responsibility to change him.
Yes. Oh, say that again. Oh my gosh.
You feel me, sis?
Yes. Because I tried that. I tried to change him. You can't.
The only person who can change is you.
And I literally lost myself trying to save this relationship, trying to do more, trying to be who I wasn't. When I left, I had to rebuild myself all over again. Like, who was I? And I wrote about that. I wrote about that in the book. I literally had to put the pieces back together of who I was.
It's like a rebirth. Yeah. Girl, I love that. I see you. I feel you. I get it. And I definitely want to order your book. So I'm definitely going to leave your info in the show notes so y'all can order it too, because it sounds amazing. And I know we are not the only ones who felt that way. Okay, so now we're going to go into what we talked about a little bit before, the healthy relationship after the toxic relationship. So I want to read this tweet that I saw online and I want to get your opinion and thoughts around it and your own personal experience. It says, yes, toxic relationships are hard, but you know what's harder? Your first healthy relationship after the toxic one. No one talks about how hard it is to unlearn all the toxic behaviors you adapted as coping mechanisms. How hard it is to convince yourself that you're safe now. How can we be open to love again? I'm asking for myself, okay?
Okay, you got to do the work. The therapy really helped me. But honestly, my faith really helped me with that, with being open to love again, because I knew God is love and I knew that I believed in love and marriage and just being all that bitter, that wasn't me. I really committed myself to going to church weekly. I really committed myself I even changed the music that I listen to, because when you are depressed and sad, if you listen to more depressing, sad songs, you're just going to drown in that sorrow. I really changed even the music that I listen to. So I really dove headfirst into building that relationship with God. And I started going to small groups at church. So just talking to other people my age and doing that really helped me. But just doing the work and just knowing that there is someone out there for you. There is. There is someone for everybody. It can be hard, but I also think that we can't punish the new relationship or the new partner because of what the other partner did, which is something that I had to work with my husband now, who was my then boyfriend. There was one situation where I felt insecure and I immediately jumped into defense mode as I was, and I reacted as I would in my previous relationship. And he was told me that's not fair. I'm not him. I didn't do what he did or even close to what he did. It was just really quick feeling insecure and then just jumping immediately right back. And we had to work through that and talk through that. And I wrote the situation, how I felt, and then I gave it to him like as in a letter. Because you said that you speak better than you write. Well, I write better than I speak. So I was able to really express how I felt and things like that. And so I gave it to him in a letter and he acknowledged my feelings. He understood where I was coming from. And so we were able to move forward. That's a sign of a healthy partner, right? Again, that they acknowledge your feelings, help you move forward. But if he was dismissive, and like, no, you're crazy, it's all in your head, that would have been a huge no. This is not going to work out. So when you're ready, open your heart to love and just know that the right person will come at the right time. Start off slow too. Don't rush into anything. Just start off slow. I'm just in such a good place right now that it's just like love is real, guys. It is. It
I
is.
love that. I love that for you so much. And just hearing that, especially as someone like myself who track record is just toxic after toxic after toxic. I don't want to give up on love because, like you said, I know the right person is out there for me when I'm ready to receive it. I feel like right now is not the season for me yet, but I'm not completely closed off how I was probably this time last year. Fuck love. It doesn't exist. Everyone's a cheater. Everyone's an abuser. Like I had that mindset. But like you said, it comes with doing the work and also having and attracting that type of partner who is open to communication and who you can feel safe with. I think that's the most important thing. Someone who makes you feel safe, that just allows you to open up completely.
Yep, they provide that safe space for you to be open and be yourself. I was talking to this woman, and she had also been in a toxic relationship for many years. And she was telling me how dating afterwards was boring because she was so used to the toxicity, to the chaos. And she was like, this is boring. But then was like talking to her therapist, it's like, that's not boring. Like, that's how it's supposed to be. Yeah. That's a big struggle too. Women can be like, he's too nice. And it's like, no, he's not too nice. It's just you're used to the toxic and we got to let that go.
Absolutely. You got to do the work, y'all. Okay. You got to do the work before you decide to put yourself out there. And like you said, don't punish the next person, whether it's a man or a woman, for what the last one did. And if those things are coming up, then maybe you got some work to still work on. So now I want to know a little bit more about you as we start to wind down this conversation. So I want to know, what would you say? Two parts of this question. Number one, what is your superpower? And number two, what is something that still needs some work?
Okay, my superpower, I want to say, is that I tend to look at the positive side of things more
The
than
glass half full.
yeah. So I want to say that's my superpower. I have a group chat with my cousins. One of my cousins was talking about the situation, and then like I asked a question, and then my other cousin's like, "Heidi, don't be coming with that positive stuff.
We're trying to be negative right now, okay?
We're trying to be negative." So that's definitely my superpower. I really, really try to look at the glass half full. Something that I do need to work on. I mean, we're always a work in progress. I tend to get stuck on things that are unnecessary for me to get stuck on. And this year, I told my husband, we have goals. I have my goals, he has his goals, and then we have goals together. So I told him, I need you to help me when I am getting stuck on something. I need you to remind me and help me to not waste energy on what is not going to help me achieve my goals. If I'm getting stuck on something, bring me back and just ask me like, yo, is this going to help you reach your goal? Then you don't need to be spending time on that. So that's definitely what I'm working on now.
I love that. I mean, everybody needs an accountability partner, right? Whether it's your man, whether it's your cousin, your sister, your auntie, whoever it is, we all need someone to push us in that direction because it's a struggle, especially if you have mental health issues in the past. It's comfortable for us to revert back. But if you have someone in your life that you're feel safe with again and you're open and honest with and they could check you, sometimes we need to be checked, and then you just continue on with your journey. So I love that for you. It's the self-awareness for me. Okay. All right. So we talked about mental health It's a huge thing that I talk about on my podcast. And I always say some day are bad bitch days. Other days are sad girl days. We all experience them. I had a sad girl day a couple weeks ago. I just released an episode talking all about it. So I want to know for you, for Heidi, how do you handle those sad girl days when life is lifing? And what advice could you give to someone who is in their season of sadness right now?
I definitely have those days. I let myself have them. Sometimes we can't give 100%. Maybe it's just 40% or 30%. That's okay. Just take it easy that day. Do what you can. If you can't do anything, just sit and watch TV. And that is fine. The only thing is, we can't stay there. If you see like your sad girls days are getting longer and longer and longer, what's going on? So I definitely have those days and I just do nothing. That's my advice. Just have them, but just be on the lookout, the self awareness if it's going longer than normally.
Absolutely. And I'm sure for you as a writer, journaling is probably a huge thing.
Every single day, I journal my prayers, I journal my thoughts. Just last night, I was getting overwhelmed on this decision that I need to make. My husband always reminds me, write it down. Write it down. So, I was like, you know what? Let me write it down. And I can do this, and that, or I could do this and that. And then that helps get it out your head and not get so overwhelmed.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, same thing for me. That's why I recorded a podcast episode. I was triggered. My PTSD came back. The flashbacks came back for a situation that I dealt with. And instead of keeping it in, which is definitely a go-to trauma response for me, I'm used to holding everything in and not letting people know. I said, nah, fuck that. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to record an episode. And like we talked about before, the feedback has been, you're so vulnerable. You're helping me. Like I just got an email a couple days ago from a woman who said, your latest episode is really helping me navigate my own separation that I'm going through. Just by me sharing my truth. How powerful is that? Same for you with your writing. That validation is great from other people, but hearing and feeling that within ourselves, I think that's the most powerful thing.
Can I ask you a question? Because you mentioned the flashback. Because that happens to me. So, like, what do you do? Do you just journal and talk it out and use that creative outlet? Does it happen often to you?
It used to before. My whole domestic violence thing happened in March of 2021. So we're going on 2 years this year. Definitely in the beginning, I would have vivid dreams and just thinking about him constantly throughout the day. But working with a therapist, shout out to Dr. Lambert, I probably talk about him every episode. He really helped me realize that when those triggers come up, and the hard thing about PTSD is you don't know when they're going to come up. So when they do happen, the first thing I need to tell myself is you're safe. You're not in that situation anymore. You're not in that relationship anymore. This person can't hurt you. Allowing myself and saying that over and over on top of breathing techniques. Deep breathing is very powerful for me personally. Meditation is great as well. Journaling is great. Recording a podcast, all those things. But when I'm in that moment, I have to take deep breaths because my nervous system is fucked up all over the place. So to regulate my nervous system, deep breathing and just repeating to myself, you're safe, telling my brain that what I think is happening is not the reality. That's been beneficial for me. And also talking about it too.
Okay, because I've been with my husband 5 years now, married 3 next month, and I still get dreams about my past situation, and it upsets me. Dreams about the same thing, like him and I are together, and then I'm going through his phone and things like that. And the last dream I had, we were still married, and he was refusing to divorce me. I remember waking up and my husband automatically can tell when my energy is off. So he'll be like, what's wrong? I didn't really want to talk to him about it because why am I still having this dream? But then I was like, you know what? I told him and then he was like, well, it's just a dream. So I was just wondering about the flashback because I still,
I do too, sis. I do too. I try not to not beat myself up for feeling that way, for feeling angry, for feeling like, oh, I'm regressing because I know I'm not. I think us having the self awareness, that is definitely showing us that we are progressing. But you were with that man for how long? It's a long relationship. You were married to him. You guys have a kid together. Like, it's a traumatic experience that you're not going to just forget. You're never going to forget about it. It's always going to be a part of your chapter in your book of life. And it's okay that it does come up from time to time, but being able to just get those feelings out immediately, talking it out, journaling it out, whatever it is that you do, I think it's important to do that and to not feel bad for when those moments happen, because trauma is trauma and it's going to be with us probably our entire lives. You got it, sis. You're not the only one, okay? So I know we're still early in 2023, so I want to ask you about 2022. Think about the entire year. What did you learn about yourself in that year?
Girl, I learned as much as I want to say that I am not Superwoman, because last year was the year of creative for me. And I launched my podcast. I launched a t-shirt business that I had to close a few months later. I launched these journals that I sell. I published myself my poetry book.
Girl, you did a lot, okay?
Thank you.
Can we clap it up real quick? Don't just gloss over that. You did a lot.
Yes, but towards the end of the year, I started getting burnt out because I was just going, and I experienced burnout. So then I had to go back to therapy, and the therapist was like, as much as we want to be a superwoman, we are not. We are humans and we need to take breaks. So 2022 was very busy. I did a lot. I accomplished a lot. I'm very, very proud. But I did learn that I do need to scale back and then just take it one step at a time.
I think that's something for a lot of us in the Latinx community, Latina community, that us doing, that's something that was normalized for us growing up. My mom is what, 62, 63 to this day. She don't know how to sit down. She don't know how to take a chill self-care Saturday. No, she always got me doing something. And that's been passed on from generation to generation. So when it comes to prioritizing rest, it can feel uncomfortable for us, right? So I'm hoping that you're prioritizing rest in 2023, but still working on your goals at the same time and maintaining that balance. All right. So you are on the Watch Us Thrive podcast. So tell me your definition of thriving.
Me right now, I'm thriving. I look back and just see how much I've done just in my 20s. I'm 29 now. I'll be 30 next month. And I just look back at everything that I've accomplished and I just be like, damn, and I'm not even 30 yet, you know? So thriving for me is now, it's just being able to have that self-awareness, be able to accomplish my goals, and then just being able to see the signs and know when I need to scale back, when I need to take rest. Just know that every day is different. Sometimes we can't give 100% to every day, but we're moving forward. We're not staying stuck in what happened to us. We are not what happened to us. We are not our trauma. We are not our depression. We are not our anxiety. Just realizing that and then just moving forward and helping others. That's what's thriving to me. Is yeah.
I love that so much. I love that you said the last part. I talk about it all the time. The power of community has been so healing in my own journey. We are not meant to be alone. We are not meant to be lone wolves out here just killing it by ourselves and burning ourselves out, like you mentioned. Nah, you need help. You need community. You need to be vulnerable and be like, yo, I can't do this by myself. And it's okay. Come on, sis. She's preaching. It is Sunday, so we might be at church right now. I love it. A couple more questions. So go back to childhood, whatever age pops up for you. Being the beautiful woman that you are today, what is one piece of advice you would tell her?
You are resilient. I went back to the age of 17 because I actually wrote myself a letter of my 17-year-old girl, and it's on my blog. So I went to that age and just know, because that's right where it was going to start when I was 17, and just letting her know you are resilient.
I love that. That's so beautiful. I think that should be a homework assignment for all the listeners. Write a letter to your younger self, and being who you are today, what would you tell her? That's beautiful. Ooh, I got to do that too, girl. Final question. Close your eyes. I want you to picture this. So, in the far future, when you're no longer living on this earth, far, far, far future, someone has to sit down and write about Heidi. What do you want them to say about you?
I want them to say that they saw Jesus in me, that they saw God and the love of God in me, because I really, really try to be a light to others and be helpful in any way that I can, honestly. I recently got a message from just a stranger. We got connected by another person, and she was self publishing a book. And I literally went through step by step what I went through. I didn't charge her. I just did it because I knew how hard it was for me because I didn't have guidance. I figured it out on my own, but it was a lot of trial and error. There was a lot of tears. So she messaged me and she was just like, thank you so much for all the help. It was very genuine and sincere, and it's rare. She was like, that is very rare nowadays. And I was like, no, it's just because I know what I went through and I just want to be there. So when someone writes about me when I'm no longer here, I just want them to say that I was a light, I was love, just like Jesus was when he came. And I just tried to be more like Jesus every day.
I mean, I couldn't think of a perfect way to end this conversation. Heidi, I love everything about you. And I know this is just the tip of the iceberg into the beautiful woman that you are. And I know my listeners are going to want to learn absolutely more about you. So please tell us how we can find your book. How can we follow you? What are you working on? Plug it all in for them.
Yes. So my book is called Words from the Heart, and it is available at barnesandnoble.com and target.com. I hang out on Instagram as much as I have a love-hate relationship with it, but I'm there. My handle is my name. It's Heidy, Heidy, period, De La Cruz, DELACRUZ 13. And then there on my Instagram, there's my Linktree link where it has everything. It has my journals, my blog, my books, my book, not just one. And yeah, that's where I hang out.
Are we getting another book anytime soon?
So I want to work on translating it into Spanish this year. So I want to do that. And then I do kind of want it to be a series. So Words from the Heart Part 2 to continue writing about my journey, my healing, and life now. Those are ideas that I have in my head. So hopefully, yeah.
Yes, I'm so excited to watch your journey. I know it's going to be very powerful for so many people to listen to this conversation and to read your blog and your stories. I really appreciate meeting people like you who are really making an impact, using their voice to take their power back, speaking up for the voiceless, letting us know that we're not alone. Like I said before, you are the epitome of the perfect guest of the Watch Your Side podcast. I'm so honored to have you here. Thank you so much for this amazing conversation.
Thank you for providing this space for people like me to be able to share their story and connect and know that we are not alone. So thank you.
Absolutely. Have a beautiful day.